Hi, welcome to Preaching from the Poets, a new online series that I'm doing where I look at the theological message behind popular songs. These are songs that you may have heard on the radio or you might have heard them growing up. Maybe they're some of your favorites. Today, we're looking at one of my favorites, and that is John Prine's Sam Stone. John Prine is one of my favorite artists of all time. He's this magnificent songwriter. You may have heard his name mentioned recently. He contracted COVID-19 and he spent some time in the hospital. He was in critical condition for a while, but I've heard he's progressing and getting a little bit better. And so our thoughts and prayers go out to the Prine family. Today we'll be focusing on one of his earlier songs. I want to begin with a reading from that song. I'm just going to read the verses right now, which are this heartbreaking story, but also showcases his songwriting ability. And then we'll come back to the chorus a little bit later. Sam Stone came home to his wife and family after serving in the conflict overseas, and the time that he served had shattered all his nerves and left a little shrapnel in his knees. But the morphine eased the pain, and the grass grew round his brain and gave him all the confidence he lacked, with a purple heart and a monkey on his back. Sam Stone's welcome home didn't last too long. He went to work when he'd spent his last dime, and soon he took to stealing when he got that empty feeling for $100 habit without overtime. And the gold roared through his veins like 1,000 railroad trains and eased his mind in the hours that he chose, while the kids ran around wearing other people's clothes. Sam Stone was alone when he popped his last balloon, climbing walls while sitting in a chair. Well, he played his last request while the room smelled just like death, with an overdose hovering in the air. But life had lost its fun. There was nothing to be done but trade his house that he bought on the GI Bill for a flag-draped casket on a local hero's hill. This song is a modern-day lament. It appeared on John Prine's debut album in 1971. He had just returned home from the Army, and he had served during the Vietnam War, but he didn't serve in Vietnam itself. He served in Germany. He was a mechanic over there. But many of his friends had gone to Vietnam, and he noticed that as they were returning home, they just weren't the same. Now, during this time, there were many songs being written about the Vietnam War, and most of them were political. But John wanted to write a song that was personal. He wanted to write about the soldiers that he knew. And so this song tells a story of a man that returns home from war, and he's addicted to drugs. According to the book Shooting Up, A Short History of Drugs and War, 34% of American soldiers in Vietnam reported using heroin. Now, we may think, well, this is just a new problem, it's a modern problem, but that's not true. Morphine addiction was a problem after the Civil War, and there's even evidence of drug use associated with war dating back to ancient times. This is because war is a terrible thing, and it changes a person. It's not good for the human spirit, and so soldiers wrestle with how to deal with this. War also causes many injuries, and so sometimes soldiers become addicted to pain medications that they're prescribed for these injuries. What we do know, and what John Prine knew all too well when he wrote this song, is that people do not come back from war the same. They're changed, they're different, and most of them will never be the same again. Some come back with serious problems, like the character in this song. He has a wife and he has kids, but his life is all messed up. The war has broken him, and it's given him a habit that he cannot kick, a habit that will eventually kill him. And the verses of this song tell this story. Now, the chorus is a mix of emotions. It begins with a vivid description of Sam Stone's addiction. And we're to understand that this is a father whose drug use affects the whole family, and it's heart wrenching. And so listen to the words of the chorus. There's a hole in daddy's arm where all the money goes. Jesus Christ died for nothing, I suppose. Little pitchers have big ears. Don't stop to count the years. Sweet songs never last too long on broken radios. Now, the line that is controversial in the chorus is the second one. And some Christians have had a problem with this line. In fact, when Johnny Cash recorded this song, he asked for that line to be changed. This is the line, Jesus Christ died for nothing, I suppose. Personally, I don't believe it should be changed, nor do I have a problem with it, and I'll tell you why. We need to keep in mind that this song is a lament. And so this is the genre of song, and this is important when we understand something or interpret something. It's important when we're looking at songs. It's important when we're looking at scripture and other things as well. And so what's going on here is that John Prine is voicing outrage about something that is wrong in this world. And so what does this line mean? Why does he include it here? Well, John Prine has actually been asked about this several times in interviews over the years. And what he said is that when he is writing this song and when he is writing this line in particular, he was trying to think of the most hopeless thing that he could think of. And so what we have here is that it's not a statement of unbelief. You know, if a person was not a believer, then this would not be a hopeless statement at all. It would be a meaningless statement. For this line to make sense, it has to come from a believer. And I understand why some Christians are uncomfortable with language like this. But perhaps we wouldn't be as uncomfortable with this type of language if we read the Psalms on a regular basis. Because this statement here in this song is very similar to the statement that we find in Psalm 22 and verse 1. My God, why have you forsaken me? This is a statement that Jesus utters from the cross. But I even know some Christians who are uncomfortable with this verse, even though it's in the Bible. But this verse here, Psalm 22:1, is not telling us that God forsakes the faithful. That's not the message of Psalm 22:1. Instead, what's going on here is that the psalmist is expressing a feeling of forsakenness. And the same is true in the song Sam Stone. John Prine is not telling the whole world that there is no hope, just give up. Instead, he's telling us that when you're in the grip of drug addiction, it feels as if there is no hope. The theme that runs throughout this song is brokenness. And so not only is it a song about the dangers of drug addiction and the horrors of war, but it's also a meditation on the fall. And so it's a reminder that we are all touched by this brokenness that has entered into this world because of sin. We are not born sinners, but we are born into a sinful world, and it doesn't take very long for sin to leave its mark. Sweet songs never last too long on broken radios. I think that's what's being expressed in that line. So what can we learn from this song? Well, we learn that lament is an important part of life. We struggle with this. We don't know always how to lament in our culture. This is for several reasons. One of them being that we've removed all the lament songs from our hymnals. We don't read the Psalms as often as we once did, if we read them at all. And so we've lost touch with lament, and it may take a John Prine song or some other song that's on the radio to wake us up to this essential biblical expression. Because of sin and the fall, there are things that happen in this world that were never meant to happen. These are things like death and disease. There are things like drug abuse and depression. And so when we experience these things ourselves, or when we know of someone who experiences these things, then it is appropriate to cry out to God and to lament. In fact, lament is what we should do. Too often, when we encounter a subject like drug abuse, we want to express some opinion that is disconnected from the humanity of the problem. We want to judge when we should lament. It's always proper to lament what is not right. Hopefully, this song teaches us to have empathy. We don't know what others are going through. We don't know what they've experienced in their life. And so when we encounter someone who is struggling or has some kind of problem, what we should do is befriend them, and we should get to know them, and we should ask them to tell us their story. And we might be surprised by what we learn. And I guarantee you that we're probably going to look at them differently after we hear their story. It's hard to find hope in this song, but perhaps the hope is found in the fact that this song is a crying out against the brokenness in our world. And so this song recognizes there is a problem. It recognizes that something is not right. And we must understand this before things ever get better. This is the first step. There is help. But first, we must recognize the need for a helper. My prayers are with John Prine at this time as he has fallen ill. I cry out against disease and sickness. These things that we're experiencing in our country right now, they are our enemy. And I pray that John and others who are suffering from COVID-19 will make a full recovery. John has taught us much through his songs over the years, and I hope that he'll be able to share more songs with us in the coming days. And so until next time, God bless.